Could you come down, Diane? We are hacking. We've stopped for lunch. We won't be home for hours, and then I would have to drive down. Why don't you get Peter to come down? He wouldn't be able to do anything. Please, please, Jack, look, we'll all come down tomorrow and see what we can do. Book yourself into a bed and breakfast or something, and we'll meet you there. In a small voice, she said, "Okay. I'll see you tomorrow." Somehow, I didn't feel as triumphant as I thought I would. The moment of exultation at her misfortune had been replaced with empathy for her pain. I didn't feel the same joy being with the children on the return ride. Next morning, we were up early and on the road by 8. We made good time and were at the house by lunchtime. It was a mess. Diane was very sad. The estate agent said, the place is only worth about $150,000 in this state. He said I would have got about 200 or more if it was in decent condition. Well, check with your insurers on Monday. They can get it repaired, and you'll probably get more than that with it freshly painted. What am I going to do, Jack? I need the money to buy Lavinia out. 150 would probably be enough for her share and portion of the stock, but I need the money quickly. Who knows how long the insurers will take to put it to rights? Let me have a look around. The children wanted to get inside to see the damage, but I wasn't about to let them any further than the door in case anything came down on them. The water was off, but there wasn't really anything more I could do than secure the property. Best leave it to the insurers, I told her. Let's go down to the beach before we go home. We went to the beach for a while and then had a late lunch of fish and chips before hitting the road. Harry decided to travel with his mother just to keep her company on the journey. For the first few miles, Georgie was pensive. Then she spoke, "Can you fix it, Daddy?" "Fix what, darling?" "Our house?" "Can you?" "I'm sure I could, love, but it's your mommy's house now, and she wants to sell it." "But you could buy it, Daddy, and fix it for us." "I like my holidays in our house, please, Daddy." "Houses cost a lot of money, Georgie." "I don't know if I have enough." Mommy said it wasn't worth as much now. "If you buy it now, you won't need so much money. Harry and me can help fix it." "Harry and I." "You were talking about you doing something," I corrected her. "Sweetie, I don't want to tell you I can and then let you down. You can keep my pocket money, Daddy." I'm sure Harry would let you keep his too. I had to stifle a laugh. Somehow, I knew he would too, just for his little sister. You can't ask him that. Boys need money for all sorts of things. It wouldn't be fair for him to go out with his friends and have nothing to spend when they are all doing things. Imagine how he would feel if they were going swimming or something and he couldn't go. He would be all embarrassed, and that wouldn't be fair. They would make fun of him, wouldn't they? I suppose. Tell you what, I'll look at things and see what I can do, but I'm not going to make a promise I can't keep. I know you'll do it, Daddy. I didn't quite share her confidence, but her words had stiffened my resolve to try. I heard nothing from Miller until Wednesday. Jack, Alex Chambers was in with me yesterday. I think we have an agreement that will suit you. Can you call in to discuss it with me? Yes, I could call in about 4 if that suits. That's fine. I'll see you then. I was on site most of the day and left in time to meet Miller. She cut to the chase immediately. Alex basically asked me what we wanted to make this all go away. He didn't put it in exactly those words, though. He was skirting around, hoping we weren't going to press for a prosecution. So, I asked what he was offering as a settlement. His first offer was $20,000. So, I laughed at him and told him that the way they had dragged it out, that wouldn't cover my fees this far. Christ, I knew you were at the top of the tree, but I'll be hard-pushed to cover much more, Miller. Don't be silly. They'll end up paying my fees and David's for that matter. David's? Yes, he was your brief when you were arrested in the first place. I'll make sure they are covered as well. Okay, so what's this agreement you have thrashed out? Graham will be discharged from the force. she'll forfeit all gratuities and pension rights. If she doesn't accept that, she'll be prosecuted. Hang on. She has a track record of trying to get even with me for her father. That's going to give her more reason to hate me, Miller. If she tries anything, this will all come out, and she'll go to jail. She will not want that, believe me. Fair enough. I just want to be able to get on with my life. It's been on hold for long enough. Get the papers drawn up, and I'll sign them. Don't you want to know the settlement figure? I'm sure you'll have done the best deal possible. I didn't go into this for the money, Miller. She looked a little crestfallen. Okay. Of course, I want to know. I just don't want to appear mercenary about it. 125,000, what? You heard. How the hell did you manage that? That's about 10 times what I thought. When I mentioned I was also acting for Harry and Georgie after they were left on their own, he caved in. Basically, what I've done is forfeited all other claims, including pursuing Graham for damages. That's why she's going to have to forfeit her gratuities and pension rights. You aren't the only one who wants to get on with their life. Everyone at her station knows how she set up the young probationer who came out with her. I'm pretty sure it'll be around the whole force by now. No one will want to work with her. That's true. It was the same in the Navy. Anyway, those rights are going to offset the settlement. As I say, the whole thing goes away, and your fees and David's, they pay them. If this had gone to court, you can guarantee they wouldn't see change out of $500,000. Look, they'd be paying for at least 2 barristers, theirs and ours. I'm sure Graham would retain someone as well, and as her employer, they could be stuck with that bill. All we would have to do is retain 2 more for Harry and Georgie, and they'd be totally screwed. Alex knows that this is a good deal for them. Don't forget, we could also go after the Devon force. I'm sure we could prove they broke the Data Protection Act and haul them into it too. And that would be me and Buck paying for computer experts, never mind having to give them access to the police system. You put that to Alex Chambers, didn't you? Oh yes, she grinned. When I said 125 thou, I think he'd have written the check there and then, but he had to put it to the ACC first. Alex knows they have no leg to stand on. We have a meeting with them again on Friday. I've made it for 2 o'clock. Can you make it? Damn sure. I'll make it. Diane wants to sell the house in Devon. The kids are really cut up about her selling off their childhood. They feel she is cutting them out of her life. Even more, that money might just allow me to buy it back. You're right. That place, didn't you? True. There was something more special about the time I spent down there when the children were younger. It was a little idle, an oasis. How is the gym going? On target to open on January 1st. How is the hunt for staff going? Fine. The franchisers have interviewed for coaching staff, but it is up to me to organize the administration and ancillary staff. Can you get time off to interview for them? No. I've retained a recruitment agency. Although I have final say on the management positions, it gives me a bit of protection from the sex discrimination legislation. Why do you need that? It's a women-only gym. I don't want male staff. Good point. The courts have started interpreting it in favor of men now, too. I'll hold evening interviews for the senior positions, but they'll be pre-selected by the agency. Actually, there are only the manager's positions to fill. How are you making sure you have enough staff to cover all the shifts? The franchisers have a rota worked out. We use a combination of full-time staff, job sharing, and part-time working. Quite the modern employer, aren't we? What prompted you to go into the ladies-only gym business, as if I couldn't guess? I smiled knowingly. I remember you very well when we were children, Jack. No one ever got one over you. She put her hand on my forearm, or your friends. Tears glistened in her eyes, unshed. I leaned in and gently kissed her. She returned the compliment with an embrace that turned me to stone, well, one bit of me anyway. I held her close. Sometimes, Jack, I wish. I place my fingertip to her lips, sure. It would never have worked between us, you know that. It could. I could make it work, Jack. No, Miller. It would not be fair to either of us. We would lose each other forever. Oh, Jack, you always knew what was right for us. I love you so. I know. I love you too. I gave her my handkerchief. Yes, I still carry one. Knowing Miller as I do, I recognized there was more to this than meets the eye. Would you like to come home with me for supper with us? I would like that very much. Preparing supper gave Miller and me a chance to sort out details of the settlement, like when I would get the money. We also discussed the possible, or as it may now be probable, purchase of the house in Devon. What exactly happened, Jack? A burst pipe? It must have happened during the cold snap. I didn't think it got that cold in Devon. Miller looked at me with the same look she gave me in the office when she asked why I purchased the gym franchise. Heaven's sake, Miller, not everything is my doing anyway. The usual method is arson. It's a damn sight easier, and it could easily be explained away as vagrants or hooligans. I'm not entirely sure she was convinced, but then she probably knew more about me than anyone else, with the possible exception of David. You should be able to afford it with comfort now though. Kind of convenient, don't you think? Look, I know you are a lawyer with a particularly jaundiced view of men, but if she gets her insurers to reinstate it, the price probably be further out of reach. Maybe not now. Stop trying to wind me up. I'll get Harry and Georgie. After supper, the children went to their rooms, and Miller and I settled down in front of the moving wallpaper. Okay, Miller, speak up. Simon and I are getting divorced, and it has hit you harder than you expected. Miller looked at me. How did you know? Your gay is a bit forced, and you were looking despondently at Harry and Georgie. Look, you can't live together as long as you and Simon have without getting attached to one another. What are you both going to do? I told you Simon is retiring, didn't I? Yeah, well, he's talking about moving to the south of France. What about the house? I'm buying his share. We bought it to take advantage of the rising market. We shared all the expenses, but kept everything else separate. It's a bit much for one, but it's a new start for you. It's a bit much for two, to be honest, but it will give us a decent lump of capital. So, you are going to sell it eventually? Well, I suppose. I'll head on and let you have time with the youngsters. After she left, I knew that my friend would need a lot of support for a while. Thursday brought 2 phone calls. The first from Miller confirmed the terms of the settlement. She asked if I could call into her office on Friday at 11 o'clock to sign the agreement. The second was from Diane. Jack, I've heard from the insurers. They are being difficult. Why? It should be a straightforward claim. They wanted to know why the leak wasn't detected for so long. I explained we had closed it up for the winter. They said the policy didn't cover the house being empty for more than 2 weeks without prior notification. That's nonsense. I took the policy out as a holiday home. I paid the extra premiums so it would be covered over the winter. Oh, is that why the renewal was so expensive? What did you do, Diane? Well, after the renewal came and I got other quotes, I took one that was a lot cheaper. Did you tell them it was a second home and wasn't occupied full-time? No. Well, they have probably given you a standard policy then. Have they made any sort of an offer? No, they just said it wasn't covered. In that case, they are probably right. I don't see any way around it, unless you did it through an agent who gave you bad advice. No, I did it online. Then they'll have everything recorded. Did they send policy documents? Yes. Bring them with you tomorrow when you pick up the children. I'll look at them over the weekend. I called in with Miller on Friday morning on my way to a site meeting. Alex Chambers was already there. We exchanged pleasantries, signed the papers, and Alex handed me a check for £125,000. I didn't expect that. I thought you would have to get the police to transfer it to you, then you to Miller before it got to me. Normally, yes. In this case, Miller gave me enough ammunition to scare the hell out of them. I told them to give me a check to finalize the whole thing. Wilson tried to bluster, but the chief overruled him. I haven't a clue how he got where he did. Anyway, it was the least I could do for a fellow former serviceman. I was in the army. He offered his hand. We shook, and he left. I told you he was a decent guy. Do you know what he was in? Paratroops. He was invalided out after a jump went wrong. That explains it. Diane dropped off the policy when she collected the kids. I had an early tea time with David the next morning, so I left them for later. David arrived bright and early. I loaded the bag into his boot, and we set off. So, you're off to the south of France then? Maybe. Depends on selling my share of the firm. I take it Harry, Georgie, and I can still visit? And what about explaining it to them? Georgie has known for the past 18 months. She saw the pair of you being a little over-friendly at one of the summer barbecues. She told Harry, and he gave her the big brother explanation. He told me, and I made sure they understood. You can hide nothing from children. I would never have guessed. You will always be Uncle David. You have two unusually well-balanced and tolerant young people there. I didn't get a chance to check the policy until Sunday lunchtime. It was as I thought. She had bought an ordinary house policy. Well, unfortunately, it is a standard policy, and they are absolutely right. Unless you inform them that the house will be unoccupied, they won't cover it. Oh no, I can't afford repairs, and I need to let Lavinia know if I'm going to take up the option. Aisha has her share organized. You said you might be interested in buying it, Diane. I've just had a lot of expenses recently, remember? I don't have quite as much capital as I had. I told you it would depend entirely on the price. The estate agent said about 160,000 as it sits, but if I could sell it quickly to you, I'd take 155. When would you need to know? End of the month. I'll let you know. It was hard not to gloat, although I will admit it was tinged with a little guilt. That passed as soon as I saw the children. Well, how was your weekend? I wasn't really all that interested in what they did with their mother and Peter, but I was interested in them. I wanted to make sure nothing was upsetting them. Peter and Mom don't seem too happy at the moment, Harry. What goes on between your mom and Peter is no business of mine. Just thought you'd be interested. Peter thinks a new gym is opening up soon. Mom is all wrapped up in trying to buy out the boutique and doesn't have any time for him. So you didn't see much of him? Actually, he was with us all day Saturday. Mom went down to Plymouth and didn't get back till after tea. He took us swimming in the morning, in the museum in the afternoon. He was good fun till Mom got back. Harry smiled insightfully and headed off to his room. So all is not sunshine and roses for the lovebirds. Oh, how my heart ached for them. Not so. One door had closed, I needed a period of reassessment. I no longer had the threat of a prosecution hanging over me. That actually came as a surprise. Up until that moment, it hadn't occurred to me that I could have been taken to court. That rocked me for a moment, but it was over. I needed to take stock. The first thing I realized was that I was still simply responding to events. I had been so busy juggling everything that I had just gone with the flow. There were some things I needed to take in hand and one I had to stop taking in hand, as they say. When one door closes, another opens. Closing that door allowed me to open one. I was now in the position to buy the house off Diane. She wanted 155,000, so I thought I would give her what she asked. It would close the deal quickly but, more importantly, give her the money she needed to buy the share of the boutique. That would keep her busy and out of my hair. From what Harry was suggesting, that would also put a little more pressure on the relationship between her and Peter. Thinking of Diane and relationships made me think of the children. We still had social services hanging over us. Zoe might have wound down the inspections, but the whole idea still rankled with me. I would have to speak to Miller about that one too. Next was the gym. I needed to check with the agency about the management positions. I wanted them filled as soon as possible. In particular, I wanted at least one filled so I could get on with advertising, processing memberships, and general administration. That should introduce a little more stress into Paradise. My job was also on the agenda. Whilst I hadn't dropped anything, I hadn't been giving 100%. What with so many office calls with Camilla and the police, I had made as many as possible while I was on site, calls and late afternoons, but not all. No one was rattling my cage, mainly because I had put the hours in on the preparation and had my crew well on side. I had to be seen clock punching. Finally, I had been so busy with all the above and my domestic duties, my social life had been severely curtailed. Golf did not count. It was time I got on the circuit. Monday was very busy. 2 projects had moved into the installation phase, and I had to brief the team on all the systems testing to be done. Additionally, a subcontractor ripped up a geothermal installation on a private residential project we had running. Since it was intended to be a showpiece for expansion into that market, I was called to a site meeting after lunch. As usual, every man and his dog turned up. While everyone was getting their 2 pence off in, I took the manufacturer's rep to the side. Tell me about it. Clear back about 6 feet either side of the damage and joint a new pipe. Is it a big job? About 2 minutes per joint. You'll spend more time clearing the top covering simply because you don't want to damage more pipe. Take the top off with a digger and then the last bit by hand. We designed it with this in mind. When can you get a jointer onto it? If you have everything cleared back this afternoon, I'll have him here at 8 in the morning. Then as long as it takes you to backfill, I should be reinstated by lunchtime. It's really not a big deal. Okay, I'll get the foreman onto it, which I did. We returned to the group, and the Ivan project manager buttonholed me. Right, Jack. This falls into your purview. How do we get round it, and how long is it going to set us back? I've spoken to Bill, the manufacturer's engineer. We clear back, he'll have a jointer here tomorrow morning, and we should have it backfilled by lunchtime. Ivan looked nonplussed. Right, excellent. Well, thanks, everyone, for attending. Bill and I headed back to the cars. That can be put in pretty much anywhere, can't it? I asked. Yes, if you have enough ground to extract heat from. The only technical bit is the heat transfer. It's a piece of piss, really. I might just be contacting you about a couple of installations for yourself. Yes, the price will be right, especially if we can use it in promo literature. But of course, there was no way I would get back to the office before 5, so I phoned my PA and let her know everything was sorted, and I would see her in the morning. Then I called in with Miller. I hope I'm not interrupting. Not at all. What can I do for you? A couple of things. Once the money comes through from the police, I'm going to buy the house from Diane. I'll phone her tonight to agree the price. Can you get the conveyancing sorted out? No problem. I would imagine she'll use Alan. What else? Can we get the social services off my back? That shouldn't be too much of a problem now the police have dropped the charges. It would help if they charged Diane with false reporting, but I doubt you want to put in a complaint. No, I just want the whole thing over and done with. I'll get hold of Sam Willis, the inspector, and see what is happening. It might take a day or 2 depending on his shifts. Fine. It's about time I kick-started the rest of my life. So, how about a night on the town? Sounds good to me. How about David? Of course, the more the merrier. I hope you're not reverting to your youth. I don't think I could keep up with your antics again. No, I'm built for comfort, not speed now, right? Just let me know where and when. I went home, made supper, got schoolwork done, settled the horses and the kids to bed before phoning Diane. Hello, Diane, it's Jack. Are the children okay? She asked anxiously. That makes a change, I thought. Yes, they are fine. I'm phoning about the house. Have you heard from the insurers? I was on with them most of the morning. I don't think they're going to budge. Are you still prepared to sell it as it is? I don't see I have much option. I need to get it moving or I'll miss the chance for the boutique. Well, if you are happy enough, I'll take it if the price is right. I can't let it go for less than 155. I think I can do that, but it might be a month before I can complete. That would be okay. I need to let Levinia know as soon as possible so she doesn't go to the market. Suits me. I'll let Miller know. Will you be using Alan? Yes, right. Get him to phone Miller and we'll get it moving. I will. And Jack, thank you. I made the biggest mistake of my life when I lost you. You didn't lose me, Witch. You dumped all over me and our children, I thought, but my words didn't reflect that. It's past, Diane. We need to move on for ourselves as much as for Harry and Georgie. I know you've done as much as anyone could to ease things through. I don't think anyone could have been as magnanimous in the circumstances. We couldn't let the children down any more than we already had. Again, my thoughts were very different. I wasn't finished with Diane and Peter yet. You didn't let them down, I did. But I appreciate you not rubbing my face in it. Good night, Jack. I really am sorry for everything. So am I, Diane. Good night. Despondently, I hung up the phone. I started soul-searching again. I just could not find anything that I had done wrong. I could only think that Diane was not who I thought she was. I was forced to ask if she had ever loved me, or was I just a means to an end for her? More and more, I was forced to think she was one hell of an actress, and that hurt more than anything. I tied it up before retiring. That night was possibly the worst night's sleep I'd ever had. The last time I heard from Miller was on Thursday. Jack, I've heard from Alex and from Alan. The money from the settlement will be in my account tomorrow week. If you could deposit the difference with me to clear by then, we can close the house purchase the same day. No problem. Give me the account details, and I'll get it transferred, she said. Next thing, I spoke the police. Sam Willis has spoken to Zoe Aristides and told her there is no case for you to answer. He is sending her the paperwork, and as soon as she gets it, they will close your file. Sam is dealing with it himself and will deliver it by hand tomorrow. You should hear from social services eventually. Heaven knows when that will be. I think it will be sooner rather than later. Zoe wants it off her plate as soon as possible. Good. So, how about next Friday for our night on the town? Sounds good to me. I'll let David know. Is it okay if Simon is there? Of course, it is, as long as you can handle it. I'm a big girl, Jack. We've been together for a long time. We were comfortable together. It's hard to close a chapter of your life and face the unknown. You have lots of friends to support you, Millie. I'm always here. Oh, Jack, I'm sorry, that was thoughtless of me. No, you were there for me. I'll always be here for you too. I know. I love you for that. Right, before we both get maudlin, I'd better get back to work. Me too. Let me know where we are going. I will. Bye. The recruiting agency called as soon as I hung up to ask if I could call them on Saturday to interview potential candidates. Naturally, I said yes, because I wanted to get moving too. I had a 9:30 appointment there. Since Harry and Georgie were staying with me for the weekend, I made plans for my mother to watch them. When I arrived at the agency's offices at 9:30, the recruiter talked with me about the candidates and the kinds of questions I could ask. I was prohibited by employment legislation from inquiring about potential pregnancy outcomes, as it could be interpreted as discriminatory behavior. All I had to do was ask them a series of questions about their qualifications that they had already addressed in their applications, plus a few to get them to explain to me why they believed they were qualified for the position. I had to ask the same questions of every candidate and was not permitted to ask follow-up questions about anything that came up from that. It was impossible to learn any personal information about them in order to assess their compatibility with others. It made sense why the company was having problems hiring the right candidates. I realized that I ought to have spoken with our HR department first. Before the candidates were shown in, I was given the applications to read through. Jenny Henshaw and Zoe Aristoos were the two that immediately caught my attention. There can't be two Zoe Aristooses in the same town, and Henshaw isn't a particularly common surname. That could make those interviews a little challenging. Before I interviewed Zoe, I had to interview for other people. She was taken aback to discover that I was the interview when she opened the door. She had a degree in social science but also had credits in business administration, which I had learned from her application. When I got to the final 2 questions in the script, her responses were essentially the same as those of the other applicants. Why do you think you will be suited to this job? I have an extensive knowledge of management systems and personnel management in difficult situations. Additionally, I have wide experience of dealing with the public face-to-face. I will be able to create rosters to ensure coverage throughout your opening hours and deal with staff and clients in a professional and diplomatic manner. Have you any additional information you would like to give me in support of your application? Well, as you know, I am currently working for social services. I am looking for a new opportunity with potential to develop. I think this venture could be the first of a chain of women's gyms in the area, and I would like the chance to be in at the start of the project. That, and I want to get out from below the dead hand of local government. Well, thank you for coming today, Miss Aristoos. I'm sure we'll be in touch. Jenny Henshaw was interviewed next. Her resume listed several general management positions she had held in various locations, some of which coincided with naval bases. Despite not having a degree, she did possess a number of computer skills and business studies certificates and diplomas. They appeared to be from similar colleges as well. My hypothesis was that she had brought them along to pass the time while Jimmy was at sea. I also noticed that she had 3 kids, all of whom were enrolled in high school. Up until the final 2 questions, the interview was almost exactly the same as the previous one. Why do you think you will be suited to this job? I am able to provide flexibility in working hours, both in the evenings and weekends. I have a lot of experience of dealing with the public, and I am familiar with a number of computer applications. Have you any additional information you would like to give me in support of your application? She stated, I will not be adding to my family, and gave me a direct look. After that, I had one more interview and spoke with the agency recruiter about the applicants. We came to the conclusion that only 3 of the 7 truly met the requirements. They were a woman named Sandra Fitzpatrick, Jenny, and Zoe. That left me shorthand by 1 person, but I reasoned that with the 3 I could get things going and keep looking for a 4th. We decided to send out the job offers on Monday. I gave Jimmy Henshaw a call. Jimmy, Jack Winters here. Is your wife called Jenny by any chance? Yes, boss. Are you by any chance the Mr. Winters interviewing for staff for a new gym? Yes, I am. Is she there? No, she's away to collect the eldest from rugby. Well, you can tell her she's got the job if she wants it. Thank you very much. She's going to wonder how I know. I suppose I'll have to tell her who Mr. Winters is. I don't think she made the association. She only met you once, I think, after my accident, and you looked like. Thanks for that look. I've decided to get out on the scene now I'm officially single. I'm meeting a few friends in the White Hart in town next Friday. There's a band and a small dance floor. It might be a chance for me to get to know my new staff. Fancy coming? Thanks, I would. We haven't got out much lately, and that is my free weekend. Would Sam Willis be interested? I suggested we might meet in a more amiable situation. I'm sure he would. He's a pretty good guy. You'd like him. I'll ask him. I take it's okay if he brings his wife? Naturally. See you then. All 3 job offers were accepted. I thought it might be a good idea to invite Zoe, Sandra, and their partner since Jenny would be there on Friday night. Diane picked up the kids for the weekend, so I called a taxi. As a result of my military training, I arrived first, naturally, and then Sandra and her husband Kwan arrived. I went back to my best cocktail party mode and quickly found out that Kwan was Chinese from Hong Kong and that I had been there on a deep-sea cruise, so I had something to discuss with him. Next came Jimmy, accompanied by Jenny, Sam, and his wife, Bryony. Having been crew on the same trip, Jimmy was able to chat with Kwan while I got to know the ladies. Eventually, everyone showed up, including several old friends that David and Miller had invited. We occupied a good portion of the bar, but there were plenty of other people there as well. The majority of the patrons were in their very late 20s to mid-40s, and there were numerous groups of women. The lead singer announced an open mic for anyone who felt like singing, and we all had a great time when the band played a few sets and I danced with most of the women in the group. There were the usual couple of drunks giving off-key renditions of Hound Dog or My Way. Then, Jimmy started agitating for me to take a turn. I was also bugged by Miller, David, Simon, and one or two of my old friends. When the band noticed it, they pinged me. My options were limited. I requested that my party piece be played. I visited every place. I observed the band members exchanging glances. They were doubtful beyond measure, but I guess they've seen a lot of pretenders go bust. After tallying them, I began narrating my version, which coincidentally was the same version Diane had heard years prior. When we were done, the bar closed. The audience cheered, and the band thanked me and asked if I needed anything else. When I asked, did they know John Martin's May You Never? As they didn't, I grabbed an acoustic and started singing, then went on to Take It Easy, which is the Ralph McTell song instead of the Eagles song. They were utterly destroyed. I returned the guitar to its owner and took my seat again. I received congratulations from our small group, and they asked what else I could play. "Where's this come from?" I asked the waitress as she brought me a drink. The waitress said, "Those two over there," pointing to two women who looked to be in their early 30s and who I thought were pretty tasty. I decided to give it a try and went over. "Ladies, thank you for the drink. I appreciate the fun that you provided. You have a respectable singing voice. I am very grateful for all the compliments. You can see that I'm with a few pals. Could you come along with us?" And they actually did. "That was a pretty good little set you did there," said a man who approached me as I was leaving the restroom. "I'm grateful. I may be a little out of touch, but once you get up there, it returns. Greetings, I'm Doug Dell. I am an advocate. Along with the band, I work with a few others." He held up a card, saying, "If you were interested, I could help you land some folk circuit gigs. I can also do other styles if you play them. Yes, not in a direct up. You would be fine. You can ask the singer, Big Charlie, if you don't believe me. Consider it." He might have entered the men's restroom with a quote from Dire Straits, "Money for nothing and your chicks for free." Upon reaching my table again, a few of the women approached me and expressed their satisfaction with my performance. The two girls came right over to me when I got back to my friend's house. Perhaps there was something to what he said, I reasoned to myself. The evening wore on. I moved around, but there appeared to be two shadows. The party dwindled until it was just Miller, Simon, David, Jimmy, Jenny, Sam Willis, Bryony, my shadows Abby and Karen, Zoe Aristoos, and me. Sandra and Kwan were the first to go because they had kids. "Jack, you really know how to throw a party," Zoe remarked. Not related to me at all. "People make a party, but the party needs to be started by someone," Abby said. "Who's up for a curry?" said Jimmy. "Hell yeah," I exclaimed. Simon, Miller, David, and Zoe all bowed. The best Indian restaurant in town was visited by the rest of us. Over dinner, I found out that Jenny Henshaw was returning to her job now that their youngest was a high school student. Bryony was searching for work as well, but part-time work only. I instructed her to call me. Karen and Abby were both bank employees. Jimmy, Sam, and their wives thanked me for the invitation after the meal and departed. It was just Abby and Karen and me. To see them home, I offered to ride in the same taxi. They said yes, but as soon as we got to Karen's apartment, they both left and asked if I wanted coffee. I believe I gave it some thought, but all I can remember is the taxi driver's smile, and I doubt the amount of the tip had anything to do with it. I woke up the following morning a little confused and unable to move my arms. It took me a while to realize what had happened the night before. Karen offered to drive me home after I had breakfast with the girls and noticed that the girl was stirring. I thought, chicks for free. She offered to drop Abby off as we drove, but she also said she would accompany us so she could keep Karen company on the way back. Peter's car was parked in front of the house when we arrived. As I was leaving, Diane was leaving through the front door with Harry. After I had cleared out of the back seat, Abby slid into it. Diane's expression was flawless. "Hello, Harry. Going fishing?" "Yeah, Peter is taking me while Mom takes Georgie shopping. We just called in to pick up my new rod." "Did you have a good night?" Dad smiled. I'm relieved that his mother wasn't able to see it. A 15-year-old boy isn't very sensitive. "Not bad. Your Aunt Miller and Uncle David and Simon were there." I turned to wave at the girls as they drove off. "Oh, were they?" Karen bent to send a kiss through the driver's window. I was not sure whether to crow or cringe. Sweetly, Diane said, "Come on, Harry, we need to get going." She shot me the ugliest look. I had a great remainder of the day and the entire weekend. I was feeling really good. I called Jenny, Sandra, and Zoe on Monday, and we made plans to meet at the gym on Wednesday night. We fought over a number of issues. While Jenny and Sandra were available to work part-time while their kids were in school, Zoe needed to give a month's notice before she could begin. They committed to starting the membership and advertising before Christmas. Sandra set up an interview and radio ad campaign thanks to her connection at the local radio station. Sandra and Jenny agreed to do the interview because I didn't have the time and because the gym was exclusively for women. That would keep me out of the spotlight and prevent Peter and Diane from knowing what I was up to. "We don't have enough management and reception staff to cover our opening hours, working 7 days a week at the moment," Jenny said. "Bryony is very interested, but she only wants to work part-time. If we took her on, would the 4 of you be able to cover the tasks?" I inquired. "Well, Zoe and I can cover most of the daytime hours. Jenny prefers to fit her hours around Jimmy's shifts. Bree would probably prefer that too. It would ease the child care," Sandra added. I said, "Now, that's an idea. How about a crush?" Zoe, who was focusing on the overall staffing, said, "Let's walk before we run. No point in increasing costs before we know it is giving us a return." Look, I know there is a lot to cover, but actual management is not going to demand a lot of time, so we can double up as reception staff. There are enough trainers to give us 1 person throughout the day. If membership increases, we can recruit more, but I think we have enough. I'll draw a rota while Jenny and Sandra get the publicity underway. We need maintenance and cleaning, but I think we can use contractors for that. As Jenny says, we go with what we've got, and until we see we need more. Oh, and we need an emergency evacuation plan from Sandra. When does the equipment arrive? Next week. The franchisers have that all organized, and once it is in, they will give everyone the necessary coaching. Well, I think we need to be there for that too, best to know in case someone is misusing it. The 3 of us knew exactly what needed to be done, so I started to feel rather redundant in the conversation. Okay, from Monday, we kick off the recruiting, and we open on the 1st of January with taster sessions for the first week. Yes, but on production of the flyer. Otherwise, we have no control of it. Jenny inquired, "Have you considered creating a website, Jack?" No, I hadn't, to be honest. I can set up a basic presence fairly quickly. We can develop it later. After handing the girls the building's keys, we concluded our meeting. They were creating so much buzz that I had no doubts they would succeed with the project. I was about to leave when Zoe stopped me. Thank you for not holding the child protection case against me, Jack. I really appreciate you giving me this opportunity. Zoe, you were caught in the middle of something not of your making. You did your job and used your common sense. There's nothing more to be said. But I have to ask, why are you leaving social services? I've been doing that for 15 years. Quite honestly, I'm burned out. It isn't the job I went into, it is bogged down with politically correct bureaucracy, arse covering, and box ticking. In other hands, your case could so easily have become a witch hunt. So, I'm lucky it fell in your lap. Partly, but Sam Willis warned me there was more to it somehow. I don't think he'll go too far in the police. He thinks for himself. I know what you mean. He doesn't toe the party line exactly. The purchase of the house proceeded smoothly. With her newfound wealth, Diane purchased a share in the boutique. Peter's worries about his gym were beginning to get on his nerves as he was pushed aside. Diane had no time for him because, of course, she was preoccupied with her own little world. It didn't help that the kids were around him so much either. Just before Christmas, things reached a breaking point, and he told Diane to leave. The only place she could go was the apartment above the store, which had been used to store inventory. She needed to make it livable now. She was unable to take the kids on the weekends because there was only one bedroom. They appeared unaffected. Since the weather was still quite pleasant, I retrieved an old caravan and set it up in the Plymouth Homes garden. I spent a few weekends down there with the kids so I could clean out the insides. I didn't want things to worsen in the house. After we cleared out the trash, I turned on the electricity again and rented a few dehumidifiers to help the place dry out a little before the bad weather arrived. While Harry and Georgie relished the experience of living in the van, we required extra thick blankets for sleeping. December continued into January. After Bryony joined the team, the gym opened on January 1st with a line forming outside the entrance. Applications for membership were consistent. We also operated a pay-per-use system. I left it up to Bryony, Jenny, Sandra, and Zoe to make an appearance at the opening. The first month was busy as expected. The fact that usage remained high and we broke even in the first quarter surprised me. I continued to frequent Peter's gym and observed the shift in his clientele. The gym itself was beginning to look a little run-down, and there were also fewer women in the area. It was obviously in need of renovation. You could do with a bit of a makeover, Peter. Yeah, we've lost a bit of business to that new women-only place. And my partners aren't as keen on spending the money to bring us up to the same standard. To be honest, they aren't actually interested in the gym as such, they are more interested in it as a business. They won't try to develop it, they just want the income stream. If I could buy them out, I would. Surely if the business is sound, you could get a bank loan? It is sound enough, but they are stripping the profits out for other projects. Even so, they should show it is viable. Yes, but you would have to buy them out, have the money to refurbish the place, and buy new equipment. That is one of the reasons that new place has attracted so many of the female customers away. And since it is a franchise, they'll replace it as soon as it looks tired. The franchisers buy equipment in bulk and get it at a fraction of what we would have to pay. Peter was also feeling the effects of the pressure, it wasn't just the gym that appeared worn out. That day, I felt more than just a boost of energy from the workout. Since Harry and Georgie were home more often, my plans for my social life had suffered a little, but I had been thinking about that night in the White Hart. I had verified that DD Music Promotions was a legitimate business by looking through the yellow pages. I had thus resumed my piano and guitar practice in order to pass the gloomy evenings. I was joined by Harry and Georgie, who I had briefly tutored when they were younger. Doug agreed to get me a couple of gigs at local folk clubs so I could see how things went when I called him, more out of curiosity than anything else. Consequently, I turned into the guy who opens for other people on a Tuesday night in front of an empty room, filling the space as he goes. Usually it held enough money for gas, but I was getting into the stagecraft thing. After a gig, though, I would hang out at the bar, and there were always some girls who wanted to talk to one of the acts, particularly the one with all his own teeth. I wasn't particularly attractive, sure. After Diane left, My confidence took a hit, but even at my fighting weight, I wasn't ugly for my age, and I was reasonably well-groomed. However, it was helpful to occasionally be approached by women. When Doug called, I had completed about 4 gigs. "Jack, it's Doug. I'll make this quick. How do you think it's going?" "I really wouldn't know. I'm really only a warm-up act." "Well, the places I've sent you are pretty discerning. If you're crap, they'll be down on me, asking why I sent you. As it is, all 4 have asked for you back and offered Fridays and Saturdays. That's big brownie points. It's time you decided whether you want to give it a serious crack. I know you have kids, a job, and all that, but I can work around all that if you are interested. I think you should consider getting an agent. Think about it and let me know." One of the most emotionally taxing years of my life had just ended. I had hardly had time to consider what I wanted out of life during all of this. All of my actions were responses. Even buying the house and putting up the gym was a response to what Diane had done, especially to me and the kids to a lesser degree. All of a sudden, I was given a chance that was exclusive to me. I was presented with an opportunity in my mid-40s that any 20-year-old would have jumped at the chance to seize. I had to consider this carefully. Though Harry and Georgie were still a priority, I saw no reason why I couldn't schedule gigs around their weekend spent with their mother. I had to talk to them first. While having dinner, I started off by saying, "You know, I've done a couple of gigs at some folk clubs." Harry had a very wide taste in music, so he said, "Yeah, Dad, maybe you should try some real music. You might get somewhere. There is a market out there for it. In fact, the guy that booked me has suggested I get an agent because he thinks I can get better gigs." Georgie exclaimed, "That's fantastic, Daddy, you've got to go for it." "Hold your horses, young lady, there's something more important I have to consider, you too. I'm not about to do something that means I have less time to spend with you, Dad. First off, it isn't as if you were going professional, you don't have to gig every weekend. You can pick and choose which ones you do, can't you?" "I don't know, son, I haven't checked it out. You were the first to know about it, I wanted to talk to you both first." "Couldn't you do it on the weekends when we are with Mommy?" replied Georgie. "There's a lot of things to think about, there's you, but there's also the horses. Your granny and granda can't do it all for us all the time." "Okay, Dad, but it all depends on when the gigs are and all that. I can stay with Granny for one night, and Mom can pick me up from there. Anyway, there isn't much space in her new flat, and I'm sure Auntie Miller would help." The children basically wanted me to go for it, but the conversation went on for a while. "We can't ask your Aunt Miller to do that, she has her own life to live." "Anyway, Dad, the other thing I was going to say is maybe I can play with you someday," replied Georgie. That was it, if they were drawn to my music, then perhaps I could set an example that would provide Harry with an alternative to the services, which seemed to be his current goal. David was my next port of call because this was exactly his kind of thing. That's how my second career as a folk singer began. I worked as an engineer Monday through Friday, and the girls ran the gym. The checks are signed by me. I spent my weekends hanging out at folk clubs, where I met lots of women and other musicians. The number of women who were attracted to musicians surprised me. I had complete control over how much horizontal exercise I received. It was kind of like my time in the Navy most weekends. Even though I was spending most weekends listening to music, I was still able to start remodeling the house. Most of the time, I would bring Harry and Georgie along, and sometimes Miller would too. Her divorce was finalized now. In addition to replacing all the wood, I used the opportunity to completely replumb and rewire the house. Along with redesigning the interior, I added bedrooms with private shower rooms. I know my limitations, I paid a plasterer. Finally, we painted the exterior and interior. Diane was spending less time with the kids. Determined to grow the boutique, she and Aisha had begun traveling to trade exhibitions, frequently abroad. Diane especially made it a point to go to events in order to be seen with the right people. She also made use of those individuals in her boutique advertisements. She lost all interest in everything else and became engrossed in the glitzy lifestyle. She also appeared to catch the size 0 bug and began losing too much weight, to the point where she was losing her cool around the kids. Sadly, Georgie was beginning to suffer from her obsession with weight, so that was the least of my worries. I mentioned this in passing to Miller. I think you should have a word with Diane about that, Jack. I've tried, Miller, it's like talking to a brick wall. She seems completely unreasonable, it's like she doesn't want to hear a word I'm saying. You have to get through to her somehow. Georgie is at a very impressionable age. I know, she's the age you were when the other girls started bullying you. Yes, and if it hadn't been for you being my boyfriend, I don't think I would ever have made it through to you and I. Let's not go there again, Miller, you are who you are. Anyway, I thought you had taken up with Zoe. You heard about that? I see Zoe all the time, she works for me, after all. Is it meant to be a secret or something? No, anyway, back to Georgie. If you can't get through to Diane, you might have to deny her access. Wouldn't that negate the arbitration? No, she is becoming a risk to George's well-being. If needs be, we can get a court order. I'll talk it over with Zoe, if you don't mind. No, I don't. The last thing I want is her becoming anorexic or bulimic. And talking of anorex, Peter was starting to look as if he was on the way to becoming one. The gym's condition worsened further since his principals were unwilling to invest more money in what they perceived to be a failing enterprise. Due to his close proximity to the town center, he was able to retain the remaining customers despite losing nearly all of his female clientele. I participated in as many clubs as I could during the winter and spring. I was finding my way up the pecking order, but I had no intention of traveling to and from performances for the entire weekend. Another factor was that the kids weren't spending any time with Diane overnight. Instead, they would visit her on rare Saturdays, but more often on Sundays. Having the kids around for the entire weekend was hurting Diane's reputation. In the nights that my parents couldn't take Harry and Georgie, Auntie Miller filled the void by watching the kids over. I accepted invitations to play at a few small festivals after that. Even though they were smaller than Cambridge, these were the places to be seen if you wanted to be invited. Of course, Harry and Georgie followed, along with my gym fan club and the legal and law-enforcing communities. Family-friendly events like folk festivals are wonderful. We had a terrific time together and the kids enjoyed masterclasses. The weekend of the Plymouth Folk Festival was when it all seemed to come to a head. It had come to be known as George's house, where we had all gone to stay. Every room in the house was turned into a bedroom because there weren't enough, and the caravan was also put to use. I had a lot of fun playing, and everyone else enjoyed the vibe. On Sunday afternoon, we concluded the event with a sizable cookout in the garden before leaving at 4 o'clock and reaching home just after past. In the town centre, police had put in place a diversionary strategy. We were led past Peter's gym, which was listed as for sale as a going concern. It was obvious that Loverboy had failed to secure the necessary funds. I refrained from gloating. When I checked the post and went home at last, things got better. I'd made it. I had been invited to play at the Cambridge Folk Festival the following year. Jimmy Henshaw called me at work the following morning and asked, "Jack, how's it going?" "Not too bad at all." "You saw the for sale sign on the gym?" "Yeah, I thought that might have brightened your evening. I've got something else for you, but I don't know whether it is good or bad news. The accident that caused the diversion was caused by your ex-wife." "Is she okay?" "Yes, she's fine, seatbelt and airbag bruises. But she hit 2 other cars, a bus swerved to avoid them, mounted the pavement, and ran into a shop front." "Was anyone hurt?" "The bus driver was concussed. Luckily, it was out of service and there were no passengers on board. The drivers of the other vehicles had similar injuries to Diane." "Was she drunk?" "No, she was on her mobile. She's looking at jail time." "Oh, how the hell am I going to tell the kids?" "It'll be a while before it comes to court. You'll be able to prepare them. And by the way, you didn't hear that from me." "No problems, doubtless, it'll be on the local news anyway." "Thanks, Jimmy. I'll see you later. Will you and Jenny be at the Foreign Hand tomorrow?" No, I start nights tonight. I had called in to leave a file and check the occurrence book, like I always do. I thought you might want to know. Diane's case took 3 months to come to court, and when it did, I got a shock. Diane just did not learn. She hadn't informed her insurers of the 3 points on her license. When they got the bill for a BMW, a Merc, her Range Rover, a bus, a building damage, stock, and loss of trade, they squirmed until they found a get-out clause. The failure to declare was just what they were looking for. It meant that all claims were forwarded to the Motor Insurers Bureau, who pay out to victims of untraced, hit-and-runs, underinsured, or uninsured drivers. They also try to recover those payments. Not only did Diane get 12 months, but she was forced to put her share of the boutique up for sale. I told Miller. So, that was it. The sound of a cell door closing behind my ex-wife was the sound of the door closing on the story of Jack and Diane. I wondered what lay behind the opening door. One thing I do know, women like musicians, a lot. Please feel free to express your opinions in the space provided for comments below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.